The calm before the storm. The desert dawn broke over Medina with a quiet that felt almost unnatural. The streets were empty, homes shuttered, and the soft whispers of worried families carried through the cool morning air. Yet beneath this calm lay a tension so thick it could be felt in every heartbeat. News had arrived that a formidable force of the Quraysh, nearly 1,000 men strong, was marching toward the wells of Badr. For the Muslims, their numbers barely exceeded 300. On paper, the odds were grim. In reality, the stakes were far higher than mere victory or defeat. This was a test of faith, courage, and human resilience. Prophet Muhammad moved among his companions with quiet confidence. His presence alone seemed to steady hearts and calm fears. He did not speak of doom or despair. Instead, he reminded them of something far greater than swords and numbers: faith in God, the strength of unity, and the justice of their cause. "Remember," he said, "victory belongs to the steadfast and the righteous. Stand firm, and trust in what you know to be right." Among the Muslims, there were men of all ages and backgrounds. Some had grown up in Medina, others had followed the Prophet from Mecca, leaving everything behind. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, known as the Lion of God, stood tall, exuding a quiet ferocity. His eyes burned with determination, a protective shield over the companions around him. Young Ali ibn Abi Talib, barely in his 20s, sharpened his sword with precision, each movement reflecting not just skill but the courage that would define him in the battles to come. Umar ibn al-Khattab moved among the soldiers, ensuring everyone's weapons were ready, calming nerves, and reinforcing strategy. The Muslims gathered near the wells of Badr, their camels lowing softly in the background. The air smelled of sand, sweat, and anticipation. Swords were checked, shields polished, and arrows strung. Every warrior knew the odds were against them, yet there was no hesitation, no wavering. Faith had transformed fear into focus. The Prophet instructed them on formations, the placement of archers, and the protection of key positions. Every detail mattered. Even in the smallest gesture, the tightening of a strap or the adjustment of a sword, one could see the tension of a people standing at the edge of destiny. Across the desert, the Quraysh marched with confidence, their banners raised high, their armor gleaming under the rising sun. They mocked the Muslims, whispering that 300 could never stand against 1,000 trained fighters. They underestimated not the swords, but the hearts that wielded them. Overconfidence would be their first mistake. As the sun climbed, both armies faced each other across the sandy expanse. The wells of Badr shimmered under the heat, and the desert wind carried dust that danced between the two forces like a warning. In that quiet, one could hear the soft prayers of the Muslims, the clinking of armor, the faint heartbeat of camels shifting nervously. Every moment stretched, laden with anticipation. Every soldier knew that history was about to be written, not by numbers or riches, but by courage, loyalty, and the unyielding human spirit. The Prophet walked among his companions one last time before the battle. He did not need to speak, his presence was enough to remind them why they were there. Each man held his sword not just in hand, but in purpose. They were fighting not only to defend themselves but to prove that human determination, guided by faith and justice, could change the course of history. Then, the wind shifted, carrying the sound of hooves and the distant cry of the Quraysh. The first arrow would soon fly, the first clash of steel would soon resound, and the desert would bear witness to a battle that was more than a fight. It was a test of what humans could endure, overcome, and achieve. As the Muslims tightened their ranks and whispered prayers, the Prophet raised his hand in silent command. Time seemed to pause. In that fleeting moment, amidst fear, hope, and anticipation, every heart beat in unison. The Battle of Badr was about to begin. And though no one yet knew how history would remember this day, one truth was certain: the courage, unity, and faith of these ordinary humans would echo far beyond the desert, into the hearts of generations yet to come. The Clash of Titans. By the time the sun had fully risen over the desert, the stillness of Badr was broken by the heavy, rhythmic thud of hooves and the clash of metal. The Quraysh army, nearly 1,000 strong, advanced with confidence, their banners fluttering proudly in the scorching desert wind. They laughed and jeered at the Muslims, mocking their small numbers and apparent inexperience. But behind the eyes of the 300 faithful stood something far more potent than mere steel or horses, a determination fueled by faith, unity, and an unbreakable spirit. The Muslims stood in disciplined formation, every man aware of the gravity of the moment. Prophet Muhammad moved among his companions, offering words of encouragement, steadying nerves, and ensuring that each soldier understood his role. His calm presence had a magnetic effect, transforming fear into focus, hesitation into determination. "Stand firm," he reminded them, "for victory comes to those who are steadfast and righteous." Then came the first clash. Arrows whistled across the desert sky, striking shields and armor with sharp, echoing sounds. Horses charged, hooves kicking up clouds of sand. Swords met with a resounding clang, steel biting into steel, as warriors grappled and struck with the intensity of men who knew their lives and the fate of their community hung in the balance. The battlefield erupted into a chaotic symphony of courage, fear, pain, and resolve. Ali ibn Abi Talib, young but fierce, moved like a storm through the Quraysh lines. Every movement was precise, every strike calculated, yet carried the raw ferocity of a man defending not only himself but the ideals he believed in. Nearby, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Lion of God, became a whirlwind of strength and valor. His roar echoed across the battlefield, striking terror into the hearts of the Quraysh while inspiring awe and courage among the Muslims. Even those who had never wielded a sword before moved with a focus and bravery that seemed almost supernatural. Farmers, merchants, and tradesmen became warriors, driven by purpose rather than fear. The Quraysh, initially confident, began to falter under the intensity of the Muslim defense. They had expected an easy victory, a quick suppression of what they assumed were inexperienced fighters. But they had underestimated the power of unity, discipline, and faith. Each Muslim warrior acted with purpose, covering comrades, exploiting weaknesses, and pressing forward despite exhaustion. Every fallen companion became a catalyst, strengthening the resolve of those who remained. As the battle progressed, individual duels began to define the course of the fight. Ali faced some of the Quraysh's most formidable warriors, dispatching them with a combination of skill, strategy, and courage. Hamza's presence on the battlefield was like a living wall, breaking enemy charges and protecting weaker companions. Meanwhile, the Prophet guided the formation, repositioning warriors, ensuring that archers covered the flanks and that the line held firm against the enemy's repeated assaults. It was a delicate balance of tactics and morale, and every decision mattered. Hours passed, and the desert air became thick with dust, the cries of men, and the metallic scent of blood. Yet the Muslims' momentum grew. Despite the sun's blistering heat, despite exhaustion and injury, they pressed forward. The Quraysh began to waver, their confidence shaken by a force they could not quantify. Numbers alone were meaningless in the face of courage, intelligence, and unyielding faith. At Badr, the battlefield was not merely sand and rock, it was a stage where human spirit, strategy, and belief collided. Every arrow, every sword strike, every command was a testament to what ordinary humans could achieve when united by purpose. The first signs of a turning tide became visible. Quraysh soldiers faltered, some hesitated, and whispers of doubt began to ripple through their ranks. The Muslims' courage and discipline had begun to outweigh the numerical advantage of their enemies. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the first phase of battle had been fought. The Muslims had proven that bravery, faith, and unity could bend the course of events. The clash of titans had set the stage for the decisive moments to come, the turning point where the outcome would no longer depend merely on skill, but on destiny itself. The battlefield of Badr had already begun to tell a story, one that would be remembered for centuries, that even against overwhelming odds, humans could rise, endure, and triumph when guided by purpose, courage, and belief. The turning point. As the sun climbed higher over Badr, the desert air became thick with dust, sweat, and the echoes of relentless combat. By now, the first wave of chaos had settled, revealing a battlefield where every decision, every strike, and every moment of courage mattered. The Muslims, though outnumbered, had held their ground and gained momentum. Yet the battle was far from over. It was at this precarious hour that destiny itself seemed to intervene, tipping the scales in a way that would be remembered for centuries. The Prophet Muhammad, standing at the center of the Muslim lines, surveyed the battlefield with calm intensity. His eyes reflected both wisdom and determination. He knew the enemy's strength, but more importantly, he knew the strength of those he led. He whispered prayers under his breath, seeking divine guidance for the coming moments. Around him, the warriors drew strength from his presence, their faith amplified by the certainty that their actions were righteous. At the front, Ali ibn Abi Talib moved with unmatched precision. He challenged enemy leaders, engaging in duels that became almost legendary in their intensity. Each strike, each parry, was executed with the focus of a man who understood that victory would not come by luck alone, but by courage, skill, and unwavering resolve. Nearby, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Lion of God, continued his relentless assault, striking fear into the Quraysh ranks. His roar, a mixture of fury and determination, reverberated across the desert, shaking the confidence of even the bravest enemy soldiers. The tide of battle began to shift. The Quraysh, confident at dawn, now faced an enemy that was more than flesh and bone. They faced a force defined by unity, faith, and purpose. Their formations wavered as rumors spread, whispers of unseen helpers, of angels joining the Muslims in the fight. Whether miracle or morale, the effect was undeniable. Hesitation crept into the ranks of the Quraysh, disrupting their cohesion and giving the Muslims a crucial advantage. At this turning point, the human drama of Badr reached its height. Ordinary men, inspired by faith and necessity, performed extraordinary feats. Farmers, merchants, and tradesmen fought with the skill and courage of seasoned warriors. Each man covered his companion, each strike was deliberate, and every moment was a testament to the power of human determination. When a comrade fell, grief turned into resolve. When the enemy pressed forward, courage surged even stronger. Strategic brilliance was equally evident. The Prophet directed movements with calm precision, repositioning archers, reinforcing flanks, and seizing opportunities created by the enemy's hesitation. The Muslims exploited every weakness, turning what seemed like a desperate defense into a calculated, relentless offense. It was not sheer numbers or brute force that determined the outcome, but intelligence, bravery, and the unbreakable human spirit. By mid-afternoon, the turning point became undeniable. The Quraysh began to retreat, their morale shattered. Some fled outright, abandoning formations and arms. Others hesitated, unsure how to face an enemy whose courage seemed inexhaustible. In this moment, human skill and human will had triumphed over material advantage. The desert sands of Badr bore witness not to a simple victory, but to a triumph of spirit, strategy, and faith. Among the Muslims, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. Every man knew the battle was not yet fully won, yet there was a collective understanding. The enemy's resolve had been broken. The Prophet moved among his companions, offering guidance, reassurance, and praise. It was a quiet recognition of the extraordinary. Ordinary humans had done the impossible. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the battlefield of Badr was transformed. Dust hung heavy in the air, punctuated by the cries of those who fled and the cheers of those who stood victorious. The turning point had been reached not by chance, but by human courage, discipline, and faith. The battle was no longer a question of survival. It was a testament to what humans could achieve when united by purpose, driven by belief, and guided by determination. In the end, Badr was not just a battle. It was a statement that the human spirit, when aligned with courage and righteousness, could challenge overwhelming odds, confront fear, and shape destiny. The turning point of the day had been reached, and with it, the course of history began to bend. The battle that changed the world. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the battlefield of Badr lay in a tense, dust-filled quiet. The once mighty Quraysh army was in disarray. Their formations shattered, their confidence broken, and their soldiers fleeing or surrendering. The desert bore witness to a triumph that would echo through history. The Muslims, though weary and battered, stood victorious, not because they had greater numbers or superior weaponry, but because of faith, unity, courage, and strategic brilliance. The Prophet Muhammad walked among his companions, his calm presence a balm to the exhausted yet exhilarated warriors. Faces streaked with dust and blood reflected relief, pride, and the understanding that they had achieved what many had deemed impossible. Victory at Badr was not merely a military success, it was a validation of human spirit guided by righteousness and purpose. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Lion of God, surveyed the battlefield with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. He had fought fiercely, his courage unmatched, but the cost of battle was evident in the fallen comrades who lay strewn across the sands. Ali ibn Abi Talib moved through the ranks, tending to the wounded and ensuring that those who had fought bravely were recognized. Even in exhaustion, there was an undeniable sense of unity and shared accomplishment. The Quraysh survivors retreated toward Mecca, their arrogance replaced by disbelief. They had underestimated not the strength of swords or shields, but the human qualities that could not be measured: faith, courage, determination, and loyalty. This battle had proven that ordinary men and women, when united by purpose, could defy overwhelming odds and change the course of history. The aftermath was both solemn and celebratory. Muslims tended to the wounded, prayed for the fallen, and gathered to count the spoils of battle, not as a measure of victory, but as a means to sustain the community and honor the sacrifices made. The Prophet reminded them that the true victory was not in conquest or material gain, but in the demonstration of courage, faith, and moral strength. He praised his companions not for the ferocity of their strikes, but for their unwavering loyalty, discipline, and belief in a higher cause. The lessons of Badr extended far beyond the desert sands. It was a turning point in Islamic history, a moment that inspired generations to come. Scholars and historians would reflect on how a small, determined group, standing firm against overwhelming odds, had achieved what many believed impossible. It was proof that human courage, guided by principle and purpose, could shape destiny itself. The battlefield, now quiet except for the murmurs of the survivors and the distant cries of retreating enemy soldiers, became a symbol. Badr was not only a military victory, it was a demonstration of the power of unity, faith, and human resilience. Every stone, every grain of sand seemed to hum with the echoes of bravery, sacrifice, and the triumph of the human spirit. The Prophet addressed his companions one final time that day. His words were calm, filled with wisdom. Today, you have proven that courage and faith can turn the tide of history. Remember this lesson, for the path ahead will test you further. But never forget, victory belongs to those who are steadfast and righteous. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the desert, the Muslims reflected on what they had achieved. Badr had changed not only the immediate course of the struggle between Medina and Mecca but also the way the world would view courage, faith, and human potential. It was a victory that went beyond swords and strategy. It was a testament to the unbreakable human spirit, capable of overcoming any challenge when guided by purpose, unity, and belief. The story of Badr would be remembered for centuries, not only as a battle but as a lesson for all humanity. That day, in the shifting sands and harsh sun, ordinary humans had achieved the extraordinary. They had rewritten the rules of warfare, proving that destiny was not a matter of numbers or wealth, but of faith, courage, and unwavering determination. And so, the desert of Badr, once silent and unremarkable, became eternal in its legacy, a monument to human resilience and the battle that changed the world.